it's the whole definitely a moderation thing for me, but you don't have to go just a month and be like, oh, I did it January 31st. Now I'm back to my old lifestyle. It's just like the diets. It's like,
Yeah.
if you're going to change your diet, it's a permanent change.
Yeah.
It's not, yeah.
I was gonna say, Corinne, did you listen to that podcast? How far did you get through the Rangdon? I think it's Dr. Chatterjee.
Oh, I listened to all of it. I finished it earlier.
I didn't finish it. I'm only I'm like probably 20 minutes into it, but then I
really good
and stuff. But
one of Tony Robbins is awesome. But one of the things that Chatterjee says that I loved was that, like, they kind of touch on the fact that there is no answer, and that's the point. Like, for when it comes down to consistency or when it comes down to creating habits, it's like there's no answer. That's why when you're looking for the answer, what you're hearing is somebody else's anecdotal point of view, right? That's what it is. It's what's worked for them. Because people talk in absolutes, right? So, like, that's what he talks. He goes on to kind of describe about how, for him, he's at the point in his life where that's kind of where I feel like I am. Like, I understand the gradient of, like, the intensity you need in certain parts, and I'm able to kind of fluctuate in and out, and it's because you've learned the pattern of habits. And it's not to talk about, like, the fact that it's better or worse. It's just like that's where certain people are. Other people, they may need to say, like, no, I can't have a drink for the next 30 days, or I have to describe exactly what a failure is to a T, and I'm not allowed to deviate at all as, like, a non-negotiable list, right? But then somebody else, like, I could tell you, Alex, like, hey, just hear your macros, go, and you'll be like, cool, and then you'll just make it work, and that's just how it works, right?
Yeah.
None of it's bad. It's really interesting because I think that people need to realize the point of, like, learning this is by doing it, and you will only get that education by application. So meaning, like, you have to go through it, you have to feel it, and then you're going to learn it.
Yeah, the one thing, and were you talking about the podcast with Chris Williamson?
Yeah.
Or okay, because the one I was listening to was, like, Chatterjee's own podcast earlier. But the one thing that stuck out to me about, like, the creating lasting change is understanding that your behaviors are there to serve a role, and you need to figure out what the role is of that behavior.
Yeah, that's why I like the Tony one with Williamson, because he goes into that a lot. He talks about, like, the most important thing is the why, and people understate it because it's been drawn out to death, especially in sales. People talk about that so much. They're like, "What's your why?" Like, they're trying.
There's
like,
the book Start With Why, and like all that.
Yeah, it's corny now, but, like, it actually should. We should reinvent it, and people need to understand the reason why the why is most important is because it's your value. I talk about this all the time. It's like value trumps everything. Everything. Like, value to me is, when you're sleeping in forever, and then you have, like, a dream that you're late, and you're like, and you wake up and you're like, I gotta go. And you run out of the, you actually are late, but nothing prior could have woken you up. That was value smacking you in the balls, right? Whereas somebody else who doesn't have value is like, I need to get up to go to the gym tomorrow, and then they create stories, they run worst case situations through their head, they don't go, right?
It's the weather's supposed to be bad, like we might get a couple inches.
I didn't charge my iPod, right? Whatever it is, and it's like, come on, like, you can go, but again, it's value, and you can't have that conversation because they think they want it because they're saying it, but it's like, I don't care what you say, your actions are showing that you don't, because where you spend your time, where you spend your money is what you value. That's how it works. You can't really avoid.
Like, I don't even, like, I used to, when I was starting to get pretty into this, like, I used to straight judge a lot of my friends and stuff. It's like, oh, you shouldn't be doing this, you shouldn't be doing that, right? Because health wise, of course you shouldn't, and they know it. But now I'm just like, look, not to, like, I certainly am not, like, condoning, like, just being completely out of shape and a fucking dredge on society because of the healthcare system, all that kind of stuff. But I'm like, if you're happy, then cool. I'm happy doing what I'm doing. Like, I'm not going to tell you to get in the gym more if you don't value it. So, but don't complain to me about, oh, I can't get a girlfriend, or, oh, like, I just wish I looked like you. I was like, I don't just wake up like this. Wake up like this and I bust my fucking ass. And then, the bone structure and the rest of it is just kind of there. But, but exactly. Like, I do not. I was like, you just got to start with one thing. Like these people with the crash diets. My buddy who's overweight wanted to go on one, and he said, yeah, I'm going no carb tomorrow. I said, don't do that. Do not do that. Like, you are big enough. You can cut carbs by 200 grams. You might have to start tracking it. But if you just try and go straight carb, you're done in 2 days. And he was done in 2 days. He just like,
yeah. It's like it's the 2-day window of when you're getting depleted, and then you actually start. You deal with the carb depletion, but then you also start burning a little bit of fat, and it's like hormones, and then your body's like, oh my god, what am I doing? And you just give it.
Yeah, because it is hard for everybody, and they call us kind of crazy, right, or whatever, like friends and acquaintances, and especially in like the corporate work environment, they're like, dude, you're just like so extreme, and like there's a whole nother level of extreme that I'm not even touching, nor do I want to touch. I'm not getting on stage anytime soon. Like, I don't have much of a desire to be like, I'm gonna push it to that limit. Like, it's like, guys, there's a whole nother level that.
Oh, it's insane.
Yeah.
You ever seen that picture where it shows like the different levels, and the guy has like, he's basically like paper, like thick skin, and then over here, it's like ripped, shredded, in shape, fat.
Yeah, and he's like still got a 6-pack, and it's just like morbidly obese. Yeah.
And then the last guy is just like normal. He's like dead.
That's truly how it is.
That's what because it's like when you're comparing it to like a show, that's what people don't understand. Like, I'll tell people, like, what was it? My client Diane. I was talking to her about that because like it seems like it interests her, maybe because her class was in like gymnastics, but like it interests her to talk about bodybuilding stuff. And once, like, well, she's always blown away about how much weight there is to lose. I'm like, oh, Diane, you would never understand. I would say I'm like 20 pounds away right now from a stage weight. Just what?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have 20 pounds to lose. Where's it going to come from? It's not storing your earlobe. It's like it's everywhere. It's like little bits, and it's water, and it's all this stuff. It's a crazy world, man. So like one of the things that I think is really important that you kind of touched on without knowing it is that like when it comes down to creating consistency, it's like understanding what level do you need, and then like one helpful thing that's helped me not only with myself but with the clients, and people could like think about this and say like, where am I? Is like, what tier are you? Like, what tier are you? What part? I hate the word journey, but like in terms of your perspective in this, where are you going? Like, are you a paid athlete where again you do have that finite moment that you're saying, I'm going to be on stage, or I'm going to be paid for physique. I'm a model. I have a photo shoot, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Insert event, or is it like, no, it is about life, right? Because if it's about life, then why are you doing something just like disgustingly drastic, like cutting every single carb?
Yeah, or not. And exactly, like if I'm getting on stage, if Corinne's getting on stage, I'm never fucking having a drink. Like, it's just not going to happen, right? Like, that is so far away. Yeah.
Well, that's no different than anything else. That's why I always find this kind of conversation so interesting, because people, like you were saying earlier, they look at this and they say that it's extreme, right? They're like, oh, well, you're crazy. I'm like, what? Why is that so crazy? It's just society saying that. You look at people who are in college, right? They're in college, they're studying. Nobody says it's bad for them to study for 6 hours a day. It's encouraged, right?
Yeah.
Calls them crazy. And then when they say I can't go out because I have to study, people aren't like, oh my God, look at you and your horrible patterns. Like, you're crazy.
It's too extreme.
Yeah, you're too extreme. Just like let it slide. Go like, like just do some drugs or something like that. That'll be cool. Let your brain relax. You deserve it, girl. It's stupid, right? It's just like, God forbid you work out for any longer than 90 minutes a day. You're crazy, right? So it's just an interesting thought, because people, when they employ those extreme, I'm going to call them reset behaviors, right? When you, like, again, no carbs, it's a reset behavior. People are living in that blanket, like on, off, extreme, like polar ends of the spectrum. They're saying, if I'm here, I hate myself. That's probably rooted in fear, right? I'm going to do this extreme other thing, and I'm going to cut it. I'm going to get rid of it. And therefore, hopefully I can get rid of this part of myself that I'm going to hate. But they don't understand. It's like that action is for somebody of a different tier, of somebody who's probably trying to create a drastic effect for a finite day, or but specific rather, right? A specific day. Whereas the person who's actually trying to create lifelong habits should be doing just that. It's actually really simple. It's like, just take inventory. Start by taking inventory. What are you doing? Like, what are you doing when you first wake up? You're probably having a cake. Okay. So, we call muffins, but they're cake. for morning, and that's cake. And then you're going to the office and you're probably having some Twizzlers, or you're probably getting somebody else to have some cake delivered to you in some other fashion. Right? And it's like you're doing this on repeat, and it's like this cortisol insulin thing that just drains you. And then they're trying to reset behavior. So it's just a thought, because I think that when people understand that, you can reverse engineer it and get really effective strategies that way.
Yeah, I think it's a reward to, like, you're right. Like I get up, or I don't, but like I get up and I have a Pop-Tart, and that's terrible. Like as far as just base food to get going with, right? Delicious, but it's like in that moment, the decision is I have a Pop-Tart and it's great, or I have a muffin and it's good and I'm happy about that. Later, I might kick myself for like, oh, I shouldn't have had that Pop-Tart. Yeah. But like, how do you reward yourself in the moment for doing the hard? Be like, dude, I just said no to that Pop-Tart. Like that's positive. Like give yourself some credit, which to me, it's easier to start with. Yeah, I'm not changing really anything drastically in my diet yet, but I walked for 30 minutes this morning. Like that's easier to reward myself with and know that I did something positive versus like, no, I refrained from something which seems negative.
The peaks and the valleys, right? And understanding how diet works, and something I was going to talk about in terms of like the bringing the two things to tonight's call was like, it's just understanding that, and just like people need to learn how to zoom out and understand that like it's not so much about, again, these massive changes. It's more about understanding what it looks like when you zoom out.
We're talking about these reward systems, or the kind of the bad habits we get into. We know they kind of hit us and we're conscious of them, but how do you work that back into, all right, I quote unquote messed up, or I knew I wanted to go out and I was going to have a couple beers tonight, or like, yeah, it's dessert night, I'm going to have like an awesome piece of cake, it's my birthday, whatever. Yeah. How do you mentally like pull yourself back from like, oh, you're such an idiot, like that is not like where you need to be going, versus, all right, I had 400 extra calories today, I know I'm in a bulk mode, so I can't just drop it for forever, but maybe it's 100 calories over the next 4 days. I mean, you still have to be cognizant about your overall diet, which is what everybody thinks is crazy. You're tracking your diet, but it's not really.
Well, it's interesting because like thinking about talking about this like amongst three friends is like very different way than us trying to actually offer advice.
Yes.
Right? It's true, because like, go ahead.
Yeah, we got.
I think it depends on the context, because it's like if I'm on a calorie deficit and I'm prepping for a show, the 400 calories over the course of a week matters. It matters in terms of what deficit I'm creating. It could be the difference between dropping a pound or not dropping a pound on that week. But if I'm just doing it for like lifestyle and it's just like 400 calories is not even worth a pound. Like a pound of weight loss is 3,500 calories. That's not even a quarter of that. Mm-hmm. So does it matter in that context? No, I might just choose to like drop it and just resume as normal the next day, like without having to course correct or anything.
It's expectations that you're saying.
Yeah, you just adjust your expectation for the next couple days or whatever.
Or what is the expectation? Like, what is it going into it?
Oh, right.
Yeah, what's your like target? Yeah, if you're preparing for a show, then that matters.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I'm prepping for a show, then it's like, okay, I'm gonna do an hour of cardio extra the next day.
Right.
Neutralize that.
That's what I'm trying to say. That's why I was saying it's really interesting thinking about this topic, because it's very different if I was just saying to you guys, like, hey, like you screwed up. Well, dude, suck it up, Buttercup. Like that's the answer, right? At the same time, though, the other part of advice is like for people who are going through this, like what's the actual answer, right? Because when somebody's dealing with different things, it could be like you need to learn how to give yourself some grace and understand that you are human, you are flawed, it's going to happen. But like, what do we do? So the powerful thing that I would lend to it is just honestly knowing to not stop just because of one thing. Because it's rooted in perfectionism, right? And that it really is. It's rooted in perfectionism. Perfectionism is usually rooted, and this is really fun when you get really into it, it's really rooted in like narcissism, because it gets really, really deep down there. There's some threads, man, and you can go down that spiral. But when it comes down to perfectionism, it's like this thought that like, because it's obviously just decays and it falls in itself like a flimsy old house that obviously has no bearing standing, right? And so what happens is like you have this bagel that was unplanned, like, oh my God, I had 400 calories. It is well inject lard into my arms now. It's like, what? How is that better? You're like, the person's just drowning in molasses. Like, this doesn't make any sense. So it obviously makes no sense. But the thing is that people are so unaware of their patterns and habits. And I had this moment tonight, actually, because again, I'm doing the same thing as you, Alex. And so the kids had pizza, and I had this moment. That's why I was thinking about this tonight. I had this moment where the kids had pizza, and I was looking at the pizza, and I was like, I was just playing this thought in my head. I didn't want any, I didn't have any, but I was playing this thought in my head. I was like, what would happen if I had the pizza? And I was like, okay, so I have a couple options. If I had the pizza, I'd do some more cardio, which is fine. I can do that. There's no fear on it. I can do some more cardio. I could probably nullify the effect. What would be the amount of cardio? I'm like, it's probably gonna be an hour. How long would I eat pizza for? Probably about 45 seconds. Yeah, right. I was like, okay. So I crossed that off, right? But then I started thinking, I was like, but what would happen if I actually had the pizza? Would it just be the pizza? And I was like, you know what? I'd probably end up driving to the store and getting myself a 6-pack.
Yeah.
And then I'd probably have some
Pizza
beers.
and beer. Yeah.
I'm just gonna chill out. And then I'd probably sit down on my ass and just watch a show. And then because of that, tomorrow morning, I may actually even cancel my client. Because I have to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning. Because now I have some beer and I'm not gonna get any quality sleep. And then tomorrow's workout's gonna suck. And then because tomorrow's workout's gonna suck, I'm gonna drop the intensity of my workout, which is gonna happen in the next day's calorie burn. I'm gonna lose it, and I'm gonna start seeing this trickle effect go down without even knowing it. And people think it's just the pizza. I'm like, no, it's what happens as like a residual effect that ripples because of the pizza. But people aren't aware. They're so unaware of how their habits start stacking or how their behaviors and their patterns start changing because of other things they've done, that like they don't even understand it. Like movement, lethargy, sleep, you name it, man, but it all gets affected. It's a really, really funny thing that I think people need to spend more time thinking about so they can watch what happens.
Yeah, it's a little bit like it's easy for us to say, do extra cardio, or like, I know I need to make up for it. But we're into this, like, especially with people who just want to try and do better.
Yeah.
It's even more extreme. They're like, well, it's shot. Who cares?
Yeah.
I had pizza today. I'm not going to work out tonight. Not going to work out tomorrow. I'm going to have pizza again tomorrow. It's the whole giving yourself a little bit of grace of saying, all right, I had it, but that doesn't mean the next day I can't make a better decision. So yeah, it's like, got to break it down even more to be like, just because you screwed up once or whatever, right, made the wrong decision once, doesn't mean that the rest of your decisions are also impacted by it.
Well, it's kind of similar to the behavior of like, I'll start tomorrow, right? Like, well, why not right now? Like, why not? Like, why not drop down to the push-ups? Like, there's this fragility that everybody's living in nowadays where they think that they have to have the world served to them consistently at the most perfect Goldilocks temperature, right? Like, you're thinking like, oh, well, no, it's 740.
Yeah.
Work out at 740. That's my favorite show, or this, or it's too cold, or I'm too sleepy, or what's gonna do, and everything turns into this perfection. Again, everything's this rooted in perfectionism. We're like, if it's not the exact requirements of perfection given to you, you can't accomplish the item. And it's the same thing. It's like, oh, well, I can't resume my diet. I had a piece of pizza. I'm like, resume it.
Yeah.
Again, accountability. What does accountability mean? So it means that you set a date. Excuse me. You set a date. You set a goal, and you're going to say, I'm going to hold myself to that. And that means my actions are accountable to that goal. So if I had the piece of pizza, I'm going to track it. Write it down. Look at it. Because when you look at things, when you tend to observe them and that you actually create that accountability where you can actually see it, then you're like, okay, this is real. I'm not going to snub this. I'm not going to put it in the closet and just shut the door. I'm going to be like, okay, calories were at 2,000. Pizza bumped it up to 2,800. Cool. Now at the end of the week, when I didn't lose weight, I can look at that and say, this is why I didn't lose weight. Or I can bring it up to my coach or my friend, or God forbid, you can just Google it because it's always there, right? And you'd be like, what can I do to burn an extra 800 calories? And like Corinne said, it's like, is the juice worth the squeeze this week? What's your goal? What's your expectation, right? Because if your goal is a certain date, then yeah, it's like, it's actually not that hard to manage. The next 7 days, you drop your calories by 100 per day, or the next, 110 per day. And that's actually super simple, right? It's a couple grams of fat, couple carbs, you're easily out of there. But again, for living in the absolute, they're not even going to have the comprehension of such a thought. They'd be like, I screwed up again, lard and veins.
Yeah. Corinne, what, like, for the people who come to you, like you said, your boss or whoever, so I'm sure you have friends that just know you do this and you're like into it, and they give you like some like, oh, I just can't, or like, oh, I had pizza today, it's fine, or I had a muffin, these cookies are so good. Like, I sadly have become kind of an asshole, but like, how do you deal with people like that?
I don't say anything really anymore. Like,
Yeah.
I'm just like, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get
Sucks.
it.
Yeah.
And with my boss, it's like, okay, well, I report to you, so I'm not gonna like start insulting you.
Yes.
Not yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
funny, man. Go ahead, sir.
No, I just think for the average person who isn't as quote unquote crazy as we are, I feel like they need more, like, we all need more like self-love, but they need it the most even to just get past the initial stages of like, no, it's all right, just start something. Like, New Year,
Yeah.
New Me is great and all, but every day is the start of a new year.
Every second, man.
Yeah,
Right?
I think like, because I was just thinking along the lines of the idea of like perfectionism, and if people have a really perfectionist mindset and they also turn to food as like a self-soothing behavior for emotional regulation, it's like if they fail to comply with the plan 100% and they eat something that's off plan, then they get emotional about it because they didn't have a perfect day. And because they're emotional about it, it makes them more compulsive to eat more. So
yeah, it's just like, if I mess up once or if I make the wrong decision once, then I might as
yeah,
well just make the wrong decision all the time. I don't even care anymore.
yeah. And with that, it's like, well, at that point, you have to do a lot of like inner work on your inner dialogue too.
Yeah.
And like have some compassion and be nice to yourself.
Yeah.
What does it mean? What does it mean to be nice to yourself? What does it actually mean? Because again,
It
I'm always
means
trying
like it means like don't call yourself a piece of shit for like eating a piece of pizza
Well,
and
I'm
then
dead.
going off the rails.
to. Oh well, I'm dead.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's true. Like, yeah, we all have terrible inner monologues. Like, would you ever talk to a friend the way you talk to yourself? Absolutely not.
Well, exactly. And it's like, be your own friend, dude. Like,
There's a time and place for it though, right? Like, and it's also context. Like, it's definitely contextual. Because like me and you, Alex, we've talked about this before. Like sometimes the answer is like, "Come on, you're being a little bitch."
Yeah, just don't be a bitch.
Yeah. But the thing is, it's not rooted in self hate.
No.
Never. And that's the thing. Like the amount of times that I'm in my workouts and I'll be like actually yesterday we were doing. I met at the gym an old client of mine. I walked in change room and he's right there and I was like, oh hey, his name's Danny, and he'll have to come on here with it. He'll have a hoot talking with us one time, and he's like, what are you training? I'm like, I'm gonna do some hamstrings. Like, well, it looks like I'm doing some hamstrings too. And then so we worked out together. And there's a couple of times like you'll be in the middle of a set when you're working with somebody who's actually really, really intense, or even just if you know how to push it. I know you do, Alex. So like,
Yeah.
sitting there and be like, you know that it's going to be hard coming up, so you have to say a couple like, come on, don't be a little bitch, let's go. And then you snap out of it. But it's not through itself. Hey, it's like, no, there's work to be done, right? And I think that's the problem when you go down to the self. Like, again, if there's like 80% of it, it's awesome in terms of giving grace, self-love, all that kind of stuff. It's great words, great stuff, but you can't let it kind of, again, blend into this other space where like work needs to be done. Because if it does, then what happens is it's like, yeah, but you're doing too much. You need to back off.
Yeah.
What happens is work doesn't get done, and then person never builds self-confidence because self-confidence is done through verification of work done, right? That's the process. So it's like, at what point do we let that slide? And again, I honestly don't have the answer. I just think that people need to be aware of that because you see it all the time.
I think you know if that's what you're doing though.
People don't.
Like, you know if it's just a cop out.
Right. I was gonna say, we know.
Yeah, I think that people know in their heart. But the problem is what I'm seeing nowadays, and this is probably not a conversation we'll get into because it's more political and more sociological. I'm just seeing more and more people get so soft that they're so afraid or unaware of their inner desires and like wants and stuff. I think you'd agree, right? So people are afraid, like they'll argue points because they just want to argue points. And so same thing. I think that they'll just like not admit it to themselves. Like, no, I didn't know. And it's like, or I don't want this, or I'm not doing this. And they just lie to themselves.
My body really needed to not go to the gym
Yeah,
today.
it's like,
I
I
haven't
know.
been since last Wednesday, but today was definitely not the day.
Yeah, like come on, you're 40% body fat. You did not need the M&Ms. That's not self-love. Like that's not the way it works, right? It's like, come on. And that's the problem. It's like sometimes work does need being done. So like when it comes to getting down to being hard, and that's the whole point of this job, fitness, if it's coaching, if it's you're the person in the weight room, you lift a heavy weight, you're dieting, you're deep into it, you're doing contest prep, whatever part you're at, it's like you have to be aware of when that is. Is like, are you in the part where you need to give yourself that grace? And what does that look like? How do you know? Or are you in the part where you actually do need to pull up the pants? And it's like, no, it's going to be shit right now. That's the point. It's going to be shit right now. Everything you're feeling is normal. Right?
Yeah, the more I had gotten into it, and of course, again, with people who aren't already as dialed in, even to like this extent, right? Like where I'm I don't know, a tier 2, right? Like I want to be strong and look awesome. Like that's what I'm doing it for, right? I'm not getting on stage, so I'm not a tier 1 for sure. But like, yeah, I'd consider myself a tier 2. I do make conscious decisions about things I eat and all that. So, but like so many of the newer people are just, it's so much more mental than it is physical. Like the gym is the easy part. Like just go in there and try. Like and lift heavy, move well. Like that's an hour of your day and you love yourself after because of all the things it does for you. But just the mental side of it for so many people of, I am tired. Yeah, yes, we're all tired. I have my kids. Yes, lots of people have kids.
I love
my job's stressful. Yes.
All of our jobs are stressful. The best ones are people try to associate things that are innately human with them, not with anybody else. Like my favorite is I like food so much more than you. Yeah, convenient. Yeah, it's not like we're all human and like food the same and are hardwired for it. In fact, we would actually probably lend the bigger people like food more, like bodybuilders, because we literally eat it more than you. It's just like it's a different thing. So people just don't want to admit it, right?
You are like pretty hardcore into it and you are super disciplined and you're exerting yourself so much and you're like super depleted. And when do you know when to let up?
Yeah.
Are you asking the question or are you posing the question?
Well, I think that goes back to your goal topic, Corinne. Like if you're getting on stage in a week, you can't. But if you're just like trying to be like the most well-rounded, in shape person, then yeah, I agree. You got to be like, and that's the hard part is, holy crap, I need some type of reset break kind of problem. Not even if it's just like, I need to go have a day where I eat pizza, but like, I need to just distance myself from
doing
this.
A little bit less one day.
Yeah.
But, I got 3,000 less steps than usual today. Let me not be psychotic about it.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where once you've pushed it, you'll push it further. And then once you've gone through it, you know how much it sucks because you've done it, right? So it's like deadlifting, right? Like you've deadlifted 400 now. You've done that. So now that you've done that, you know what it feels like. You know how heavy it feels in your hands so that when you attempt 410, you have some kind of gauge.
Also, why am I so weak? What the hell? This is stupid. I'm done. I get it. You got the little skinny motherfucker on the podcast. That's cool. Great.
There's no trend in it. It'll be trend, not freaking large.
God.
But like that's the thing is like once you've experienced it, you've exposed yourself to that new threshold, right? And so I think that's what you're trying to, what you're almost alluding to is the fact that like, how do you know when too much is too much? Well, you don't know. But what I can say is that like there's always a new level of discomfort. There will always be one. Because it has to do with your current functional capacity, right? And so while that is true, that's also relative to you, meaning that the individual has to be understanding of their own expectations. And so meaning like if you have a date, like Alex said, and it's like, no, this is happening in 3 days and it's tough right now. I am sorry. You have a choice still. Like it is pull your pants up time. Doesn't mean you can't pull your pants up. Like if you can't, then I would suggest you back out. That's what it's still your choice. It never stopped being your choice, right? The other side of it, well is understanding like when you come across those times, not everybody's meant for everything. Meaning some people who go for these like Ben when obviously muscle intelligence, Ben has talked often about how he'll be like in like high level positions with like these people who run companies. These people are amazing in their jobs and stuff, and then he'll be doing physical endeavors with them, and they're just little pussies, right? And it's like, you know how to do this so fucking well, but you can't do this. You know what I mean? And then this other thing, like push a bar 10 times without crying. Like it's push. What it is? It's push a bar.
But there's like almost like there's almost like a finite reserve of going hard for those like executives. Like, yeah, I'm an executive, but my job, it's not like holy crap, like company's on fire kind of stuff, right? Like that stress in my job is not like that. It's like, but if they're doing like really high stress work, maybe there's just a finite pool of human, whether it's physical or mental or, stress at home or whatever. There's just, it's the weight, your body can do it, but the whole central nervous system is just like, no, I can't. All of my resources went to solving XYZ today, and this is just too much. There's just a hard cut.
Yeah, like some people do. It is going to be an energy thing, right? An energy, and obviously, like the goals. And I think that's all rooted in the same thing, which is the second you get deeper, you will get deeper the next time. Then you'll get deeper the next time because you'll understand. You'll understand what that level sucks, and then you're like, okay, well, I know that sucks, so I know what to expect. But then now that you'll feel that, like you see this in bodybuilding competitions all the time. You see, if you look back at people's first show, they're not as shredded as their sixth show, right? Why is that? Do you think it's because they didn't try? No, they tried just as hard, but the level changed, right? Like they tried just as hard. It's like when you pulled, like again, when you use Chris Deadlift example, when you pulled 375, you tried just as hard, right, as when you pulled 400. It was the same level of effort. It's not like you tried less hard. You tried the same. That's the point. But it's the strength, and because you did 375, that you could do 4. You didn't just like skip 2 to 4. See what I'm saying? Like you had to go through that dirt to get there. That's the point. It's like people will literally, if you look at the comps, there'll be different levels of shredded. They'll be able to bring themselves down from 5 or 7% to 4% to 3%. And it's because they've gone through it. So when they get to the 5 now, they're not freaking out. And they're like, I know what
this is wrong. Yeah.
Stress tolerance.
Normal. Yeah, this is normal. So that's what I was trying to say. I think this is all rooted in current functional capacity, because it doesn't mean you're wrong for feeling it. It just means you need to assess, like, is the goal still of a higher priority, or right now are what you experiencing? Is it at the current top and you're saying I'm tapping out because I can't do this? And that's, again, if you look at like other sports like MMA, they won't tap, right? And then what happens? Snap.
Yeah, because
they won't tap. They're like, I've dealt with this before. Oh, he broke my arm. Oh, like it's to them, they were literally in like a position where they're like, I've dealt with this before and nothing's gonna happen. Snap.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it's a funny observation. They're nuts. They're nuts, man. They're absolutely crazy.
My arm's broken. Okay.
It's crazy. My client John, he rolls around. He's not that. He just does jujitsu, but he rolls around and he dislocated his toe, and then he went on, and that was just a happening. He dislocated. He popped it back in. Continued to roll around for the next hour. His workout was unscathed, right?
Yeah.
Whereas like meatheads will be like, "Oh my god, I hurt myself." 5 days later, they're better, but they call it an injury, and now forever they won't hit, I don't know, shoulders, because my shoulders is not as it used to be in high school. Right?
We got 315 in high school, baby.
315 in high school, bro. 315 high school. Yeah.
Legit. Got this trick knee though. Couldn't go pro. No, I think to Corinne's point of like, how do you allow yourself that grace? Again, I steal from podcasts and things all the time, but Williamson has another one that he's always talking about. Seems like we deal, certainly myself and like the people on this chat and the people we deal with, like type A people with a type B problem don't get celebrated, but type B people with a type A problem get all the like support in the world. Like the type A people who are actually out there stressing about killing it every day. Like everybody's like, oh, I'm sorry, you can't take a break. Oh, what's wrong? But everybody out there on the couch, everybody's like, come on, man, let's go to the gym. We got you. Let's do this. Get up, do that to-do list. Let's send those 5 emails. So it is funny, just like how the one side can't let go of like achieving. And it's just as stressful and detrimental as like, oh, I can't get my ass off the couch.
It's just levels though. It's the same thing. It's levels, right? Because to somebody else, like they've built that. That's why this stuff is so interesting, because like, you can't solve the problem of like a different tier than you've been exposed to. You can't even comprehend them. That's the point. That's why the only thing you can do is consistently just move forward. And then there's no, I shouldn't say there's no shame, because I'm not sure it's the right context, but like there's nothing wrong. It doesn't make you evil for tapping out. If you tap out, all I suggest is like when you tap out, if it does happen, then you observe the behavior, you pay attention, and you ask yourself, it's like, what was my why? Was I missing that? Something went wrong, right? Because like, would you have tapped out if you, I don't know, were financially motivated? Would you have tapped out if it wasn't you doing this for, but you were doing this because, I don't know, you had like a grand goal of making money so you could pay for starving kids, I don't know, to eat or something like that. Like, assign a different value center to it. Would you have done it, right? And then it's like, if you can kind of use that information to say like, yeah, maybe I misaligned. Because, and this is what Tony goes into in the podcast with Wellington. Tony goes into this a lot, talks about like the why being the biggest thing. Because like you'll never stop being pulled from a why. That's the point, right? You'll get tired from pushing. You can push, but you'll get tired. Because if you're pushing, you're trying to make yourself fit into a mold that isn't inherently you. Yeah. And that's, again, getting down that rabbit hole is now you have to discover what is the inherent you, what is the true you. So like, do you want to go there? Do you want to understand how to unpack that? Do you understand all that stuff? And that's like a 10-hour long conversation unto itself. But when you know the first thing, it's like, am I pushing or am I pulling? Do you even know that? Do you actually even know how to figure it out? Right? Because when you're pulled, you won't stop. That's the point. So people who are pushing look to those who are being pulled, and they wonder how the fuck they're doing it. That's why.
Yeah, you don't even think about it. It's not something that no, this is just what I am and what I do.
And that's why things can turn like this. Because what happens is when it comes down to being pulled, it has one thing, it's value. It comes back to that first word, it's value. So it's value is interesting because like you don't know if you have it until you figure it out mentally in terms of like the framing. That's why people's lives can change the second that they find it, right? So when would times be like that? Near-death experience, loved ones, people passing, right? Like significant life changes happen. That's something value turns on. And they've always had the value, but they didn't understand the framing of it in their mind. So the person who fails in the past, they can revisit the things and with newfound value and be like, oh my God, I've always hated the gym, for example. I've always hated it. I could never stick my diet, could never stick this. But I have kids now. So I want to be around for them. And then they start working out forever. Right? Because they're petrified of leaving their kids alone, right? It could be that. It could be any of the other reasons, right? But that's the whole thing, is trying to figure out that why so you can root it in value. Because then once you have it, you're unstoppable. Nothing's going to ever stop you, because no matter what comes up in your brain, you're like, doesn't matter. Doesn't fucking matter. You'll just do it. I think, again, the important part that I would want to drill home, though, is to understand that people need to realize that you can find the value. You have to just figure it out. And you have to find that why for yourself, which comes back to the same thing, right? Is because if we're talking about consistency, like if that's kind of what we're actually leading towards is consistency, right? Then what does consistency mean? And I think that needs to be defined first. I think that people think that consistency means I've told myself I'm going to do this thing, and usually it's with a healthy dose of perfectionism, right? You're going to do this thing like a robot forever. And then what happens is they inevitably fail. And then because that perfectionism has been sprinkled in there, they give up, right? What I'm suggesting is that we need to set an understanding of consistency and adherence as like a more global understanding that's reverse engineered from the goal. Meaning that, like, what are the patterns and habits that lead me to being the person I'm trying to become? So if the person I'm trying to become is an athlete, then how many times does an athlete really train? Well, probably train like 4 maybe 5 times a week, right? Okay, so you missed it on Tuesday. Cool, go to the gym tomorrow. You don't need to go today. Life happens. Happens all the time. Like more often than you know. Like just go tomorrow, nothing happens. In fact, like me and you've talked forever, Alex. Like with the research on like fatigue management, a day off is always going to only help.
Right.
It only ever helps. Nothing happens other than like positive things. So it's like take a day off. But you have to understand the global thought, because if your motivation is rooted in fear or in self-punishing or in reset behaviors, then you will consistently lean back on daily action items that must be done as non-negotiables. And then when you inevitably fail because there's a non-negotiable, that's now related to you being a failure, right? Oh, you suck. Oh, you couldn't keep it up because of this, right? And then it's that detriment, and it shows how false and how fake you are. But it's like, no, it has nothing to do with that. It has to do with the fact it's like, what's the goal? How do we zoom out? And how do we stack habits and align them for what I'm not sure if the term would be global consistency, but it's consistency towards the goal rather than towards the day, which may sound counterproductive because there's a lot of people out there who saying like win the day, but I'm not sure if I like that, because like, what does winning the day to you mean? To me, it would mean, again, wake up, cold shower, eat avocado oil, sprinkle it in honeydew melons, you know what I mean? And like go for a walk, say a prayer, meditate for 15 minutes. And it's like you have this list, and like, God forbid I didn't have one of those things go on because I actually have to make some money. Then it's like, okay.
Yeah. I think you gotta. So you have. I always go back to, again, because I don't have clients who are like paying me for it, but my friends ask me and all this kind of stuff, and my friends who aren't already at the level of like, no, this is like, how did you do that? Oh, like you just did it, right? They have to start. I just feel like you got to drill into them. You got to start so much smaller than all in. Like, if you're struggling going 2 times a week, go 2 times a week for 6 weeks. All right. Then you stack on, all right, yes, and I only have pizza once a week. And you just stack on littler things that they can feel good and winning about. And eventually, I mean, especially if they're just wanting to get in, like they don't have a timeline, like I've got to get on stage in 6 months or whatever. But you can work back from that goal in manageable bites for people who aren't already in it. And I think that's where consistency starts. And then before you know it, they're not even thinking about it like, oh, I have to do this. It's just, they do it.
Don't do everything at once. Choose one thing that you're committing to for the next foreseeable future, and then you add to it.
What would you say for the people who've already been in it, who are in it, and like maybe they're like year 4 and they're struggling with consistency, and maybe the goal is more specific?
Well, if they're struggling with consistency, it's like, are you newly struggling with consistency? And why are you now struggling with it 4 years in? Like, I think that's a larger question than
struggling with consistency at 4 years in. I mean, I admit I hit every once in a while. I do have the right, because again, we're all relatively dialed in and we're pretty conscious about our decisions and our food and stuff. Just like, I do have everyone's like, holy shit, I have to do this forever. Like there's a big expanse of like forever, or it does go away relatively quickly if you just let it go. I mean, it's gone in a few weeks.
Well, that's why it's an identity-based habit.
That's the point. Like that's what people don't get. Like the amount of times I've had client conversations like that literally echo that, is it's like, this is forever. Mm-hmm. I'm not trying to say you can't look at a glass of wine again. I'm just saying it's forever. And so the association changes. And that's why this all seems like a magic trick to people who don't understand it. Because they're like, how does that person have the Cheetos? They're in shape. Like, how do you have licorice? How do you have a beer? You're like, because like the habit isn't rooted in self-loathing anymore. And it doesn't own me. And that's the whole point. Like, you've earned that. And it takes time, right? Really funny, because it's actually this is kind of rolling into the next point I was going to bring up, which is like, it was back to the question about you, or that I asked you, Corinne, is like, what would you provide people who've been in it for a long time? And one of the things I found really beneficial is like just the art of learning how to zoom out. Like just zoom out. Like, again, what does it mean to be consistent? Like you're saying, like, well, why are you dealing with that? For sure. Like the person obviously needs to come to terms with that and actually figure that out, because they're probably missing some kind of value, or just they're operating without like a compass, so to speak, right? They're just kind of like going through this world. But if you zoom out and you start looking at things different, then not only is that an amazing strategy for weight loss, but it's also a really good strategy for muscle gain too. Because like, like, people might not know this, so this might just be a little bit of an anatomy dump. But like, Corinne, what do you say for a pound of weight loss? 3,500, right? So that has nothing to do with you eating one slice pizza today. Nothing. Like, legitimately zero. Like, there are so many other things in the next 6 days, as well as the current day that still resides with the pizza in you, that you can do to balance that equation.
And that's only if the pizza is on top of the rest. I mean,
Right?
it's not the best wholesome food, which I'm never, like, you won't catch me doing that. I'm macros based, yet sometimes they're pretty shitty. Sometimes I have a good day nutrient wise, but if the pizza is just in your total intake, then who cares? Yeah.
But yeah, it's true. And like, if you zoom out, then you start looking at, it's like, okay, I have this bigger grand goal of hitting 14,000 calories a week rather than nailing 2,000 a day. And that's been a massive game changer for a lot of my clients, because they realized they didn't have to achieve perfection, but I still got them to do the same thing that they were going to do. And then they're like, oh my God. Now, will you see some fluctuations in energy? Maybe. Will you see some fluctuations in digestion? Yes. Like, there's things, but at the same time, though, like, nobody's gonna be perfect anyway, so you're gonna have to battle a different slew of issues otherwise, right? But the other thing too is, if you look at the anatomy behind muscle growth and stuff, it's like, yeah, so what do we know? Frequency matters more than intensity. Frequency matters more than volume. Like, these things don't matter. Frequency matters. If there was a thing that's going on right now, it would be learning how to be maximally loaded in stable positions and do it as often as possible. Right? That's basically it in a nutshell. It's hypertrophy training, right? So if we can do that, then what does that actually look like in terms of zooming out, rather than thinking Monday's chest day, I missed Monday, I'm a failure. See what I'm saying? It's like, no. You just got to hit your chest twice this week, bro. It doesn't matter. So when you hit it? Oh, tomorrow? Okay. So that just means you just like kind of bump the next workout, or like maybe you should have some more calories and then just do a morning workout and do an evening workout, right? Like, there's so many other strategies that happen when you zoom out, rather than thinking that, again, it comes down to that non-negotiable list. Because if you had the non-negotiable list, which again could be a good strategy for somebody, if you had it and then you missed it, then that's going to reaffirm that you're a failure. And I'm not sure if I'm for that. Again, it could be something I've had them, but like, I don't think that's necessarily going to be beneficial for somebody.
I concur.
I should have concurred.
For Dr. Gav Given, I should have concurred.
I agree that with the. I struggle with it personally, because there's the don't be a bitch, go do it, but also you're overweight, but you've done something about it today. Celebrate that. You're a good person. Go for it. But you still got a ways to go. So go do it, you little bitch. Like, there's like such a mental hurdle of be good with it and celebrate, but realize that there's way more work to do and it's forever, and make decisions that you can keep forever, especially when you're starting, because the next harder decision is easier knowing that you already conquered one decision.
Alex, when you're like, there is so much more work to be done, and it's like, whoa, like, don't tell them that. Like,
I know, but I'm just saying, like, you
don't like discourage them with like
you personally have to get there. I'm always just talking to me, because I don't have clients and I don't have to deal with babies, because again, like, my friends, I just shut down on them. To your point, like, if I'm not actually trying to coach them, and like, they're not like really invested in my advice, because they're not, they just want somebody to be like, it's okay. Yeah, I get it. Cookies are tough to turn down. Right. That's all they want from me. But if there's, so I'm not like, I'm much more on the friend side of like, I'm not going to baby you. You're just my friend. Whereas like, yes, if you're paying me and I need to like keep you moving in this direction and you need like some motivation, I'm not going to be like, hey, fucking David Goggins, that shit. Who's going to carry the boats and the logs?
True. When you were talking, I was just thinking if there was two, because there's two people we're talking to, right? There's people who need the motivation, the coddling, and then there's the people who need to put their hands up, right? And so what I was gonna say is like there's two things that I would say to literally close. It's point number one is that all roads lead to work being done, calorie deficit, weights being lifted. That's how it works, right? And like you can do whatever the fuck you want. I don't give a shit what you do, but you will end up there.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever biohacking, whatever life searching,
Fast you learn that.
Whatever amount of self-loving and forgiveness and healing bullshit you want to believe that you need to do, you'll do it, and you'll still end up at lifting weights, training, like right, and some modality of dieting. That if it's losing weight, it will be a calorie deficit, and if it's gaining weight, it will be a surplus. So again, no matter what you choose, you'll end up there. Okay, that's
you call it your biohack, whatever it is. It leads. The underlying thing is that
it's still there. So avoid it as long as you want. You're still going to end up there. So take that as you will, right? Yeah, it's just I think that people tend to avoid it because they don't want to confront it, and that's it's very sad because again, knowing that typically it's one of our catchphrases, but knowing that the only way out is through, it's like it's just hard to not like and you want to reach to the screen and sometimes like grab people's heads and shake them.
Well, the thing actually that frustrates me the most is I am full on for my friends and people who want this advice being happy in life.
Yeah.
Right. And so if you are happy overall, then don't beat yourself up for the cookie that you don't necessarily care is hurting. Like you're good. Just don't complain to me about it. I'm okay with how you are. You're my friend. I don't care what you do.
Yeah.
And that's the long and short of that. Like I just don't care.
Which is the fact that like just understand that like long lasting change is behavior change. Just like it's small things. Right? And the irony is that it's even if you think you're writing off more than you do, you're actually still doing small things. Because I thought when I first started lifting, I thought I was making massive changes. And those massive changes were getting new gym shoes, getting a gym bag, going to the gym and buying protein powder. And I thought I was making waves.
Dude, I'm in it for the swag.
You know what I mean? And I'm like, now I'm like, dear God, if I was to like throw my daily habit list at that guy, he's not an aneurysm. You just like there's no way to function with all this shit. Right?
Well, again, that's the overwhelming part. Like the Corinne's point, like you can't do it all at once. Like there's no sense in trying to.
It's ironic. Actually, you know what's really interesting? Do you guys actually know what the number one reason why people fail is? Do you actually understand why? Like not consistency wise, but through the scope of like why people don't start and get the ball rolling, like the choo-choo going. Do you actually know why it is?
I don't know. Is there like some kind of, I'm going to probably overthink it, and there's like some kind of chemical thing in the body of like you are fine the way you are, and so there's this natural disinclination to do the hard thing.
What do you think it is, Corinne?
One of them is maybe start anxiety. But I do agree with what Alex just said, though, which is that your brain wants to preserve the status quo. And if what your brain knows is sedentary, then that's how it wants to be.
That's why it's overwhelmed, right? So it's always overwhelmed. Yeah, because basically what you're doing is you're throwing anything beyond the person and anything beyond TV remote in hand at 9 p.m. watching, I don't know, House, Grey's Anatomy. I know that Alex likes watching the OC. Like,
you got Tim right.
Anything beyond, again, 9 o'clock, remote in hand, do that. You rebel against it. And what happens is, again, it's overwhelmed. The body's like, no. You know how many clients that I've literally suggested, like they want to lose weight. I'm like, hey, 30 minutes cardio, you got to throw it in. They have no time, but I know them personally. I'm like, you literally have nothing but time from 5 until 11 p.m.
Yeah.
But they're like, I don't have time. I'm like, all you have is time. But it's to that is like, I need to relax from my work.
Yeah.
So like you've just shown me what matters to you, which is fine. Just don't complain to me about it.
I feel like it's that Seinfeld. You watch Seinfeld, Alex?
Yeah.
Remember that episode where he's like, they thought we were gay. Nothing's wrong with that.
Nothing's wrong with that. I always caveat it. I'm always just like, well, I mean, you're a fat piece of shit, but you're happy. It's fine. It's fine.
It's still the way it is, but it's fine.
Yeah, I mean,
Awesome.
that is the one thing about getting coached is like, I don't know that I would have to do some real patience training because I just lose clients within a week. They're like, I only asked you to do one small thing. Don't come talk.
I honestly think it's the opposite. Dude. I think that if you find that you have like, you know, without being too corny, you feel like you have a calling to do coaching because you want to help people with this kind of stuff. I think that this being a platform to show people like who you are is only going to gravitate people towards you because of that no nonsense. Because there's so much of the opposite right now.
Yeah.
There are so many people out there. Like my wife just got a client tonight, for example, and one of the you know what the literal thing said. I hope her boss doesn't hear me so she doesn't get fired. You know what the intake form actually said? It said the lady has she's had coaches before and she's traumatized from having to track macros. And so why is that? Well, it's because in her past she probably was told from somebody who onboarded her that you can come into my diet program, you can eat the same foods you want to eat, you can have the same drinks, you can do all your same things, and you'll lose 10 pounds. And it's like, it's all fucking horseshit.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you're gonna carry the same habits and patterns into your life, and somehow things are gonna change. It's like, no, it's just the same thing, right? But now you're gonna stress about it. That's great. We're gonna throw stress in there. So, anyways, different can of worms.